Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Well, Craig, this month is Request Month, where we fulfill all of our loyal listeners' every desires. And as it turns out, our listeners are pretty boring, and they just want us to watch movies and jabber about them for an hour. Who knew?
Who knew?
Today's movie comes from our listener, Nick S., and he recommended an old movie I'd never, ever heard of before. It's a Peter Weller and Shannon Tweed film called Of Unknown Origin. Man, I do nothing about this movie, and even when I went online to find out more about it, there's really almost nothing there.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it either. I'd never heard of it.
This turns out to be a 1983 film directed by George P. Cosmatos. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's a pretty prolific guy. He's directed stuff, you know, Tombstone.
Yep.
Rambo First Blood Part 2. A couple of Cobra, that other Stallone movie back then. Leviathan, kind of one of my favorites, which Peter Weller was also in, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, so he's a pretty prolific for what he's done. And then the writer of this film, the film was actually based off of a novel, apparently a best-selling novel called The Visitor. Brian Taggart. And Brian Taggart, you will know from such classics as Visiting Hours, Poltergeist 3, episodes of V, The Omen 4.
Oh, that's funny.
Stuff like this. So, not the most prolific. When I was watching this movie, there was times that I was watching it that I thought I was watching more or less a big-budget Hollywood film. There were other times I watched it, I was thinking I was watching a made-for-TV movie.
Kinda, right?
It just kind of depended on the scene, depended on the circumstance. But what this movie really did for me was transplanted me back to the 80s. I mean, the portrayal of this guy's job and these people's haircuts and their outfits and their clothing and their glasses, it could not be more 80s than this. Even the house that this guy is in, and the guy's name is Peter. His house, the first shot in the movie is kind of a pan up this house. And from the outside, it looks like this very old... It's like a mansion that looks like a castle, but it's kind of smack dab in the middle of a city, right? There's got to be a term for that kind of architecture.
It's a brownstone, and like
I don't know that.
It's a 3-story brownstone, which is amazing, and like that, it's very New York. It's especially, like you said, this movie paints the picture of what we all thought New York was like in the 80s. Like, I don't know if it was really like that, but, these business people in power suits walking down the street, and everybody lives in these brownstones. These brownstones in New York, only famous people or the very, very wealthy live in them.
Yeah.
Because, like, they're kind of like these standalone buildings right in the middle of the city. They have to be worth millions upon millions of dollars. And we're kind of just supposed to believe that this kind of, I guess he's kind of upper level business, financial guy, I don't know, but supposedly he bought this place and refurbished the whole thing himself, which, all right, I mean, willing suspension of disbelief that this guy could afford this huge standalone building right in the middle of Manhattan, but okay.
Yeah. Manhattan, which at times looks like Canada because that's where it was filmed. Yeah, this guy, Peter, is again, like you said, an up-and-coming businessman, business executive. We meet him, and his wife is Shannon Tweed. Now, Shannon Tweed, I mean, every other Up All Night movie that wasn't a horror film, Shannon Tweed was pretty much in. In the 90s. She's a former Playboy centerfold, and this was her very first film role. She did I think she did a couple episodes of Falcon Crest and some TV series before this. But this movie came out like 2 years after she posed for Playboy. And then she just took her top off for, I don't know, over hundreds of movies, basically, between the 80s and the 90s. I knew more of the 90s Shannon Tweed, and this is the much younger, like, I don't know, like 20s or early 30s, Shannon Tweed. And yeah, she's pretty stunning, but she doesn't have a lot of airtime in this movie.
No, and that's like when I was reading about the movie, everything I saw was like it's Shannon Tweed's first movie, and she gets the and introducing Shannon Tweed in the opening credits. And she's the main guy's wife. So I was expecting her to have more of a role. But when I was looking at the IMDb page, she's listed like 5 characters down. And it makes sense because she's really not in it. Like, like she shows up in the first 30 seconds so you can look at her boobs.
Yep.
And then, and then after that, I can only imagine that she probably could have filmed all of her stuff in a couple of days. Like,
and on somewhere far, far away because she's hardly with her husband in most of it.
No, she's on the phone for like 90% of her screen time.
Yeah, where you can see her in a swimming suit. Or in a tennis outfit. In either case, we don't get to see her boobs, but we get to see her nipples poking out pretty hard. It's so bald on its face.
Yeah.
That you have to smile.
And it's funny because I knew nothing about this movie and I had no idea what kind of movie it was going to be. And then so you get that the opening shot is of this building or whatever, and then it goes inside, and the husband, I feel like, is maybe, I don't know, laying on the bed or getting dressed or something, and then it goes to her in the shower, and I'm like, oh, well, it's going to be this type of movie. No, it's not. It's just like, we got Shannon Tweed, so let's just show her boobs real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yes, exactly. It was like Tracy Lord's starring role in Not of This Earth, same kind of deal. Got to get the boobs in there, and then, well, in Shannon Tweed's case, there was a boob. There were at least 2 boobs in every movie she did. Anyway, all right, we don't have to keep talking about Shannon Tweed's boobs. Let's.
Well, we might need to because
well, they're there.
Because there's not a whole lot to talk about with this movie. Like, that's what I kept thinking when I was watching it. It was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to talk about? And I usually take, like, pages of notes, and I've got, like, 3/4 of a page of notes here, because what this movie is about is this guy. Okay, so his wife and kid go on vacation without him. They're going to visit her dad. And he kind of acts like he's a little bit annoyed about it, but he has to stay because there's this new project going on at work that he's been assigned, and if he gets this project done, then he's going to get this big promotion, so he can't go. So we get them out of the picture, and then basically the rest of the movie is he realizes that there's a rat in the apartment, and he battles the rat for the rest of the movie, and that's it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. If you like this podcast, please share it with a friend.
And we can get into details, and there's some interesting stuff to talk about, but seriously, that's it. Like, to me, it felt more like an episode of The Twilight Zone or Tales from the Crypt, where if they had wanted to, they easily could have squeezed this into half an hour.
And maybe they should have. I mean, it's actually when I was watching it at first, and I knew nothing even, going into it at all either. I didn't look up a thing. I didn't know it was about a rat. Did you? Did you know it was about a rat?
Well, okay, so you sent me the link because I watched it on YouTube. You can rent this movie on YouTube. That was the only place we were able to find it. And in the link, when I clicked on it, the trailer played. Okay. So I saw the trailer, and I saw that it was about a rat, but the trailer makes it look like it's going to be, like there's going to be some kind of big twist. Like the very end of the trailer shows the brownstone being all lit up from behind, like there's like a spaceship behind it or something. So I thought that there was going to be some big twist, like these were alien rats or something.
Oh,
but no,
were waiting. You were waiting for the whole movie, weren't you? Oh man,
it's just a regular old schnauzer-sized rat.
I didn't even realize at first it was going to be about a rat, because there's a couple shots at the beginning where he's making toast or whatever, standing, and his toaster is there, and you see just what looks like a shadow, and it'll creep across the toaster and the reflection and go away. I thought, ooh, that's creepy. It's like sinister or something, you know? And there's another scene when he comes home from work. He's been put on this big project. There's all kinds of unimportant banter about this project that he's been moved from this account to this other account. And
why in the name of Jove did you pitch that pyramid thing to James Hall? Man, I was flying with that grain deal.
Oh, whoa. Look, I need a hands-on guy, Bart, who's right to handle the reorganization of all of the branch offices of this trust company. Somebody with new ideas, not old ones, with a facelift.
Well, this is the topic of the day,
Well, the topic is over. I need it packaged for the board of directors meeting in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks?
Can you do it?
I have to shift some things.
Which is why I gave Pyramid to Hall. And Laurie can handle whatever else you've got.
I'll give it a shot.
It's yours, kiddo. Because you know what's riding on it.
you know, it's just all a bunch of office finance gobbledygook that we don't need to understand. We just know it's really important. And so he comes home from his job, and he's walking around the darkness, and there's a lot of music throughout this film that plays. It's really creepy. And again, you see this shadow, this really big shadow, it's almost like the shadow's slinking away from him or away from his shadow. And I was like, oh, this is going to be this sort of creepy haunted house kind of things in the shadows kind of movie. And then you just start seeing a lot of close-ups of rats.
Yeah, like the first one you see, it's like I mean, I guess maybe it was a real rat paw, but it's such an extreme close-up that it looks huge. And so it looks like, you know, scary, evil rat hand. And so, like, I thought maybe it was going to be like demon rats.
We both had high hopes.
In a sense, it kind of is, because this rat that he battles is like the most wicked, vicious, horrible rat you can imagine. Like, I was
when it wants to be.
When it wants to be. I was talking to my partner about it last night, and like he was rolling his eyes, like, I don't care. I don't want to see this movie. I don't want to talk about it. Save it for the podcast. But I was telling him, I was like, so the rat, when you actually, like, when it attacks, because eventually it does, like, it starts attacking him and stuff, it's the size of a small dog. Like it's huge. But then they show all these close-ups of it, and it's just these extreme close-ups of real rats. Like, and real rats are not the size, or at least none that I've ever seen in movies or anything are that big. So, like, there's just kind of this discrepancy. Like, like when you actually see the footage of the rats, they look, I mean, they're dirty and wet and gross. Like, they try to make them look as gross as possible, but they just look like rats. And then when this thing attacks him, it's this huge thing that he's fighting with, and it makes, like, squealing pig noises. Which is kind of hilarious.
That's one of the problems with the movie, is the scale is not consistent at all. And you don't even realize, you really want it to be a big rat, you know? Like, the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, I hope this rat is huge. I hope this rat is huge. And you're seeing these close-ups of it, and you're like, well, of course they had to close-up film a rat, but, you know, there's no context, you know, so it's like the Attack of the Giant Ants, you know? They film these ants really close-up. It's what they had to do. But then you get these shots that are point-of-view shots of, like, the rat scurrying between the walls, where it has chewed through the 2x4s a little passageway for itself. And I mean, it couldn't be more clear that this rat is smaller than the width of a 2x4.
Right.
And so, like, what is it? You know, it's just very disappointing. And it can get into the, you know, the closet. It could be on shelves in the closet, or shelves in a small cabinet or cupboard. It can come up through the toilet. But at the same time, like you say, it's like bashing itself against the door, like a dog. And I don't think we were working with two rats here. That was not the twist at the end, was that there were two rats. There was just one. So yeah, that was a problem with the movie, I thought, was the general, I don't know, kind of confusion, which leads to a little bit of lack of terror. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel like the movie, okay, so, gosh, you know, we're just kind of all over the place, but it's because we can't really talk about plot, because seriously, the plot is he just fights this rat in his house. And, like, there's it starts out normal, like he tries to set out, regular rat traps, and that doesn't work because the rat just chews through them. And so then he gets like these big medieval torture chamber rat traps.
I don't know where you get these things, but I don't even think they're legal. There's no way.
I can't imagine. Like, they look like bear traps. And he sets those around, and it doesn't work. And then, like, the rat's just, like, tormenting him. And, like, eating his food and chewing up his mail. Like, that was another thing that I loved. Like, it was like this rat really had a vendetta against him. Like,
yeah.
Because at one point he calls he doesn't want to call an exterminator at first because the super of the building next door.
Come on, exterminator, what are you kidding? It's for little old ladies. And people don't want to get their hands dirty. You don't have any problem with that, do you, getting your hands dirty?
No, I got no problem getting my hands dirty. See, I renovated this house from the bottom up, see?
Jeez. Very nice, very nice. It'd be horrible if an exterminator came in here and unrenovated it from the bottom up, huh? Teared out your cabinetry over here, took this out, maybe got behind the wall, because that's what they do, man. They wreck the place.
But eventually, when things have gotten really bad, and obviously this rat is out to get him, he eventually calls an exterminator, and he says to the exterminator, okay, I won't be home, but I'll leave you a key in the mailbox or something, and then I'll leave the check underneath the hood of the turntable, like the record player.
Yeah.
And he does, and then he comes back, and the rat is still there. It's playing the piano. It's like, I guess it's supposed to be like on the chords or the strings of the piano, and so the piano's playing. And he calls the guy, and he's like, "What are you doing? You came and you took my money, and the rat's still here." And the guy's like, "You butthole! There was no money." And like, he looks around and he finds that the rat has taken the check and chewed it up. Like the rat knew that this was the check for the exterminator. Oh gosh,
yeah,
it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny to talk about.
I honestly felt like you could take the sinister music out of this movie, replace it with comedic, lighthearted music, and this movie would play as a comedy. And in fact, as I was going through it, I was bouncing back and forth. I was like, is this supposed to be funny? Is this supposed to be a black comedy? Because it's taking itself awfully seriously at points. But yet, at other times, like there's a moment where he's in the living room reading, and it's really late at night, and he hears the rat scurrying up above him, and he stands up on a chair, and he takes the novel he's reading and slams it against the ceiling to try to get it to stop. And of course, it's Moby Dick.
Moby Dick, yeah.
And I think The Old Man and the Sea is like showing on TV. Like,
yes.
Like, it's just, so there are these little nods, these cute little funny things. And again, it's really so comical by the end of it. And I think part of what helps too is this guy, this super. It reminded me a little bit of Fright Night. How the kid thinks there's a vampire living next door, so he goes to his friend who's like the vampire expert.
Right.
And he keeps going back to him, and he keeps telling him all this new information. Or Lost Boys or whatever, the same kind of deal with Corey Feldman's character.
Right.
This guy was like that. It's like, yep, you got a rat. You got to take care of it, but you can't just, bring the exterminators in. Okay. So then he puts out the traps. I tried the traps. It didn't work. And he's like, oh, no, you can't use those traps. Those are my grandma's traps, You got to so he gets the bigger ones. And he keeps going back to this guy for information or for advice. And eventually he goes to like an army surplus dude, and he's buying like heavy duty equipment, like leather jackets and lights to put on his head, and it gets, again, it ups the stakes, but it ups the stakes in a way that a comedy ups the stakes, where this guy is going to more and more extreme measures towards this rat in the house. Yet I feel like the movie just is really trying hard to make this seem so sinister that it just doesn't work either direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and like you said, there he's trying all these different things, and like it's so extreme. Like we talked about the medieval torture rat traps, and then he goes and he buys poison.
We got two main kinds. This one thins the blood, and this one works with water.
What's the difference?
That'll turn him into a walking hemorrhage.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't want him to bleed all over my furniture. How about the water torture?
Steer clear of him for this one. It'll give him a powerful thirst. He'll run for water. Keep your toilets closed and no water around. He'll aim straight for the sewer and drink until he bursts. Pop like a balloon.
Really?
You watch out. Steer clear of him. You get in his way and he'll go right through you.
What was kind of funny to me was when he gets this poison, he just, like, sprinkles it all over the house. Like, that can't be right. Like, I don't think that's how rat poison works. Like, I don't think you...
The rats just go up, oh, here's an interesting powder I haven't tasted. Yeah.
Oh, right. And the rat's, like, always watching him, like, like, I see what you're doing, mister. I'm not going to eat that stuff.
Yeah.
And you just see that, like, the tail slither around a corner or something. It really is funny. I mean, there was a movie, I feel like, there in the mid-90s or something with Nathan Lane that was called, like, Mouse Trap or Mouse House or something.
Yes.
Which was basically the same premise, except it was a kid's movie, and they were trying to get some mouse out of a house. But, like, it's the same thing. And the other thing that I thought was comical was, I think that this is supposed to be kind of a psychological movie, kind of in the vein of, like, Edgar Allan Poe with, like, The Telltale Heart or something, where your main character is getting increasingly more crazy as the tale goes on. But the crazier he gets, the funnier it is. Like,
yeah.
His crazy is funny. Like, it's like wide-eyed, shifty-eyed, putting on military gear crazy. And it doesn't play it for the humor at all. Like you said, like it takes itself very seriously, but it's pretty darn funny.
Yeah, it is. And what also kind of is a little silly about it is that he gets all this gear, right? And I think for the last half of the movie, he's got a baseball bat he's just carrying around with him everywhere he goes. And anytime he actually is at a moment where he knows where the rat is, he just runs away from it, right?
Yeah.
Or he doesn't pursue it. Like, for example, here's the rat. It's obviously inside of the piano, you know, walking on the keys or whatever.
Right.
He sneaks up to it, and he slams the lid of it down and to trap it inside. And you're like, okay, he successfully trapped the rat inside this piano.
Right.
Then he just, like, slowly lifts it and sticks his hand in.
Yeah.
And
I didn't understand that at all. What was he even? What was he reaching in there for? I didn't even understand what was happening.
He was reaching in there for a rat trap that he had put in. So he reaches his hand in, he pulls out the rat trap that's already tripped, and he's like, "Damn it!" and throws the rat trap. And I'm like, "What? Like, the rat is presumably still in there, like,
right?"
and things like that just happen through the whole movie. I mean, if he's going to carry this baseball bat around, then when the rat comes into view, you got to run after it and hit it. Instead, he gets scared by it, and he lets the rat go off. And he doesn't even follow it, you know, most of the time. There's a scene where he's in the bathtub, right, and he's falling asleep. He has a funny dream sequence about his wife and his son.
Yeah.
And when he wakes up, the rat is attacking him. And so he just runs out of the bathroom, knowing that it's still in the bathroom, and leaps up onto a hammock that is strung up across his son's room. And I don't know if that's a hammock he put up there, if it was a hammock that had his stuffed animals in it or something, or what. Or was it a hammock in their bedroom? Was that their sex hammock? I don't even know.
I don't know.
Come to think of it.
I don't know.
I don't know what that hammock was doing there. Anyway.
I also don't really understand the I mean, I get that this is supposed to be it's a standalone building, so they have the whole building, but I never really understood the geography. Like, I never really understood where he was in relation to other places, like, because at some point he goes down into, well, the next door super tells him, well, did you check the boiler room? And he's like, no, I put stuff in the basement, but I didn't check the boiler room. Like, you've got like a sub basement. Like, I don't even understand what's happening. And so then when he goes down there, he finds like this sewage pipe that the cap has been screwed off of. So I guess, and he's like, oh, now I know how you got in here. Like, the rat screwed off this thing. I don't know. Yeah. And I feel there was stuff peppered throughout. Like, you mentioned Moby Dick and the Old Man in the Sea. Like, we're supposed to get these references. So he finally figures out that the rat is, I guess, you know, getting in through the basement or whatever, and he finds a whole nest of baby rats. And that's the first time that the rat like attacks him, like squealing like a pig. I guess like it's protecting its young or whatever. And he just drops all the rats and runs. And seriously, this rat that we never really see. I mean, when it's big and attacking, I mean, we kind of see, it just looks like he's kind of wrestling with a stuffed animal. But like it's got a hold of his pant leg, and it's like pulling him like a dog would pull him, and he gets out of there. But there are just so many holes. Like, okay, so you found this whole nest of rat babies, and yet we're led to believe that you're only dealing with one rat. Like, that's not how rats work. Like the movie even takes the time to tell us that. Yeah. My favorite scene in the movie, well, it's twofold. First of all, he goes and he does research on rats, and so we get to see all these gross pictures of rats, like, eating their babies and eating each other, and, like, just all these nasty videos and things. And then he goes to this big, important business dinner where he just goes off on this huge monologue about rats.
Did you know that over 1/5 of all the grain on this planet is destroyed by rats? And that's more than drought, flood, or even insects destroys. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
That's over 5 billion pounds of food alone in this country. Now, can you imagine how many mouths that would feed? Not to mention the possible fiscal loss it must mean to a company like this.
No, I can't.
Yes, it's extraordinary. In the 14th century, the rat carried the bubonic plague flea that killed 1 out of every 3 people from India to Iceland. Yeah, it's true. Can you believe that? The most horrible catastrophe in history. Over 1/3 the entire population of the civilized world destroyed by rats. Not bombs, not guns, but rats. You take your average rat, it can wriggle through a hole no bigger than a quarter, swim half a mile and tread water for 3 days. They can eat through lead and concrete with these teeth that are like chisels that exert an unbelievable 24,000 pounds per square inch per tooth.
Really?
Yeah. They can survive being flushed down a toilet and enter a building by the same route. They can fall 5 stories down to the ground, run off unharmed. And 2 rats, mind you, 2. Just 2 give you 20 million rats in less than 3 years. And they say now there's many rats on this planet now as people.
And it's hilarious, and everybody is listening to him, and they're like trying to eat their food. He's talking about how disgusting rats are.
In some cultures, how they eat rats, and it tastes like stringy chicken, and they're all like pulling the chicken out of their mouths.
Yes. Oh, it's funny, and I feel like it's all supposed to lead, we're supposed to see that his mental state is deteriorating, but it really just plays really funny to me. And it's funnier to talk about it than it is to watch it. Like, watching it, it's just... I wouldn't say it's boring, but like I said, it could have been condensed into half an hour, and I think that it would have been more entertaining.
Well, the movie sets up, it does a really good job of setting up like a castle of stakes. He has this important account that's at work, and this is obviously interfering with that. Like, he's not able to get his work done, and every time he comes into work, the secretary is getting more and more worried about him. He's getting more pressure from his boss, like, I'm not sure you can actually perform. You got to take care of whatever's going on at home, and he's falling asleep at his desk. So there's that aspect of it. Then, of course, there's that natural thing where nothing he's doing to the rats, these successively bigger and bigger things are getting resolved. And then he starts having these nightmares and these dreams kind of where his kid and his wife are involved. Mm-hmm. Like his kid's eating rat poison or his wife gets attacked. And I'm thinking, well, there are a couple things I'm thinking throughout this whole thing. First of all, I'm waiting for the stakes to finally get that high. Beyond the one guy in this house against this rat that seems content to let him sleep at night and do his work when he needs to, but tortures him endlessly whenever the film calls for it, basically. Mm-hmm. But then I'm thinking, okay, yeah, but then his wife and his kid are going to come home and they're going to be subjected to this, or maybe they're going to come home early and they're not going to know about the rat, and so there's going to be like some serious danger here. How's this going to come to a head with his account at work, especially after this what had to be like an embarrassing, business dinner? There's even a scene where his secretary comes home with him. and ostensibly just to drop him off. And he says, "Oh yeah, come in and have a look at the house." And they have this very short and kind of strange scene where they have an intimate moment, and it's like he's complaining about his wife a little bit and about how maybe she's a little distant from him. Their expectations are a little different. And she comes up close to him, and they lean in and they have a kiss, and then the noise from the rat, makes a sound, and he says, "I think you need to go home." So now there's an additional thing, apparently, with his secretary and some, there's infidelity happening, right? Potentially, at least the marks of it. And so there's all this web of stuff that ends up, every bit of it just kind of falls away, right?
Yeah.
The kid and mom never come home until the very end after everything is finished. Nothing ever happens with this infidelity. His boss at work, at some point, it turns out that the people who they were supposed to meet from the other clients or whatever from the other cities couldn't make it in, and so he says, "Oh, I guess you got 2 more weeks to work on this."
Yeah, everything just kind of falls into place. Those dream sequence scenes. Now, initially with the first dream sequence, it was like the kid's birthday or whatever, and the wife like puts down the birthday cake in front of the kid, and then the rat jumps out of it and everybody screams. At that point I was thinking, oh, okay, well, they've come back. But then after that happened, I thought, they're not coming back. They're not going to come back and be a part of this. And so then later, when there was another dream scene where he dreams that they come home, and like the wife like immediately mounts him while the kid is in the kitchen making up some rat poison cereal. I knew that they weren't going to really come back, and at least until everything was taken care of, like you said, which is what happens. But then that whole scene with him and the secretary, and I don't even know if she's a secretary or if she's a part. I don't even know who she was.
That's true. But assistant at the very least.
Yeah, it seemed like it. I really didn't like that scene because it just served to make him unlikable and like gross, like, and that's it. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. Like,
no, and it comes out of nowhere because you don't see this kind of chemistry between them in any of the other office scenes where it's all business,
right? I just didn't like that scene, and again, it's just another example of that's something you could have cut to make this a little bit shorter. And it's not like it was a long movie; it's only an hour and a half movie, and I wouldn't say that I was bored necessarily. It was fine. It just was okay. And we're doing requests this month, and we've got some interesting requests. And it just I find myself sitting here wondering, what is it about this movie that made somebody want us to talk about it?
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't know. Nick Sible, is that who you said?
Nick, yeah.
Nick, chime in the comments. Why did you want us to watch this movie? I mean, it's fine. We did. I'm happy to talk about it, but love to hear your take on it.
Well, it's just kind of middle of the road, Again, that by the end of it, I did feel like I'd seen a made-for-TV movie, in a way. It was just so middling. Nowadays, made-for-TV movies are pretty good, but back in the 80s, made-for-TV movies were just kind of, oh, that was nice, usually. Right. And then he does all these kind of strange and completely unreasonable things, and I think that made it more difficult to buy the whole psychological breakdown of this person. Because, well, let's be honest, Peter Weller, he's kind of stony-faced. In every role he plays, he doesn't seem to have a lot of range as an actor. Maybe I'm wrong, but, I'm thinking of him from, like, RoboCop and from...
He's done a lot of TV work lately. His name is so familiar to me, but I feel like I just haven't watched a lot of his stuff because he wasn't really that familiar to me.
He was the star in RoboCop. He was in Naked Lunch, if you saw that. Played the same kind of guy there. He was Buckaroo Banzai from Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, which is something I haven't ever seen 100% through, but, popped in and out of it. He just has a look to him and a way of acting that's not terribly emotional. Mm-hmm. He always tends to be the dark, broody guy, or in the case of RoboCop, the robot.
Right.
And in this movie, you don't really see anything but dread from him. It's dread from work. It's dread from the rat. And so where can you go? How do you get more dread? You don't. You just get more stony-faced, except this time you have a lot more gear, that you're setting around the house. And to be fair, it does culminate at the end, like it's supposed to, in a huge showdown with the rat. But honestly, that, even at this point, it's just a rat.
Right.
It's only one. And up till now, it hasn't killed anybody.
Except the cat.
Except the cat. Yeah, that was another thing. Let's come back to the cat. Let's come back to the cat in a second. But except for the cat, it hasn't killed anybody. It hasn't tried to gut him in his sleep. It's basically left him alone, except for a few moments. And otherwise, it just tears stuff up. At one point, it tears up his work. And I think, oh, great, all hell's going to go loose. And that gets dropped. At the end of the movie, when he's going crazy and he's got his bat that he has nailed nails into, and his completely leather geared up outfit and his helmet and the whole 9 yards, I'm sorry, even a rat the size of the dog is not going to get through this guy before he could kick it or whack it with this thing. It's just not going to happen. It's not this rat that we've seen.
Right.
And so it seems to me, when he's running around the house, destroying his own house to get to this rat, the rat was on the defensive pretty much the whole time. Unless it brought the house down on him somehow. That was the other thing. I thought maybe he's secretly chewing through all the 2x4s and the house is going to come down on him or something. But I was looking for anything.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like the guy... I don't even think we said his name. Bart. His name is Bart. Bart thinks that this rat's out to get him, and the movie kind of goes out of its way to make it seem like it is, but really it's just doing rat stuff. It's just chewing through the walls, eating the food. At some point, it finally chews through the electrical wires, and Bart's like, "Aha! I wondered when you'd finally get to that." I get it, but you think this rat's out to get you, but that's what rats do. And that was the other thing that I kind of kept thinking about. This is in New York City. There are rats. We're going to make a whole horror movie out of one guy's battle with one rat? I could just imagine people living in New York being like, yeah, buddy, you poor thing, you've got one rat in your house. I've got 14 living in my pantry.
For sure, right?
Oh, it's silly. But then you talk about that last, the final battle is really just funny. I mean, I wasn't laughing at it. I wish that it had been funny enough that I could laugh through it, but really I was just kind of stone-faced watching it. But that's when he's got his big bat and he's got his shin guards on and he's got, all of this protective gear on, and really... I knew what was going to happen. He was so concerned about preserving his home in the beginning, and then we were supposed to have seen him go through all this mental deterioration where he's totally blown off his work, and he's made everybody at work mad, and he's just obsessed with this rat. Well, he kind of has to be because it keeps messing with him, but I knew that it would get to the end, and the end would just be him totally destroying the house, and that's what it was. He has that bat, and he starts in the basement, and the rat's down there, and he busts open a pipe, and so there's water shooting everywhere, and then he just goes through the house just destroying everything. Presumably chasing this rat who we see the tail scamper away every time he swings the bat or whatever, but he just destroys the house. And I feel like this was supposed to be symbolism, but it was so heavy-handed that I just could hardly handle it. In the basement, there's a scale model of their brownstone. A dollhouse version of their brownstone. And at one point, the point that I was getting to was that he destroys that with his bat. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. You're going to destroy your house. But one of my favorite stupid parts of the movie was when he had all these medieval traps set, and he set one of them in the dollhouse, and then I guess he's going to retrieve it or check it or whatever, but it's been moved a little bit, but he's just fumbling his hand around inside the dollhouse, where is it? I'm like, you idiot, you're gonna spring it on yourself. And he did! Like,
Yeah. Really stupid.
Really dumb.
About as stupid as reaching his hand into the piano. Another moment of supposed tension that led nowhere, that also didn't make any sense, was at some point his secretary, I think it's maybe the night before his work is due or something, decides that she's going to break into his house.
Right.
She just rifles through his desk and finds clearly marked, it says desk set, which I guess means the set that you keep in your desk. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm too young for this reference. Anyway, so she takes it, and she, instead of knocking on the door, she just lets herself into his home. And then, remember, she has no idea that any of this is going on. The only idea she has is she's seen obviously him talking about the rats at the dinner. I think she was there, and she's seen magazines and things about. He's got some weird rat obsession,
right?
But anyway, she doesn't know what he's facing at home. In fact, from that earlier scene, the only thing she can logically think that he's facing at home is some kind of depression about his wife and son. At least I think that's what the movie was trying to set up. So she comes into this house and is meekly, "Hello," and then spends the next 10 to 15 minutes quietly prowling around, like she's expecting something to jump out around the corner any moment. It makes no sense, A, why she's there, B, why she just didn't announce herself, and then C, why she's creeping around the house like there's something to be scared of.
She's walking around in her stocking feet, and so we see her feet just walking right by these medieval rat traps, she's gonna step in one of the scary rat traps, but she doesn't. She just finds him, and he's crazy.
There's no payoff there whatsoever. She doesn't get attacked by a rat. She doesn't step into the rat trap. She sees him on the stairs, and he's like, "You need to leave."
Yeah, he's in the squatting position with an army helmet on.
Yeah. And so she goes, and that's it. Another scene that clearly could have been cut. So let's go back and talk about the cat. Because the cat comes into play after the first scene where they almost made out. And he drops her off or lets her go. Then he turns around, and he sees a cat on the stoop of the house. And is like, "Aha, you're going to help me out." And he picks up this cat, brings it in, and has a charming little conversation with this cat on the kitchen counter.
Where do we get this sweet face? What do we got in here? A saucer. Yes. Over here. Would you like some old ketchup, please? You like a lime? No? No? Okay. How about a cucumber or a banana? What's in here? Let's see what we got in here. Did you know that I was king of all the pretties? Did you know that? Oh, good. 2-week-old oysters. Want some of those? Oh, I like those. I used to have a putty just like you. Except my wife sneezes, so I can't have one anymore.
And I have to think that most of that was ad-libbed. Again, another thing that has absolutely no payoff. The cat just walks around the house.
And the rat stalks it. There are so many funny things going on here. Okay, so he just, he sends her off in the taxi, and then he's like, "Oh, hello, kitty." And he picks up this beautiful cat. I imagine street cats in New York
are not this gorgeous.
Not being these beautiful house cats. And he picks it up, and it's totally docile and nice, and he takes it in the house. And I'm thinking, A, if that's an alley cat, that's not what alley cats are like. B, if that's really what that cat is like, you just stole somebody's cat.
You need to scan that thing for a chip.
And then he takes the cat in, and this poor pretty cat is just, we just see shots of it walking around the house like a cat would, and the rat stalking it from above. The cat will be walking under a glass table, and you'll just see the rat's big, wet, gross paws on the tabletop. And then eventually, again, there is a payoff, but not much of one, because the guy, Bart, just wakes up one morning and he goes to get milk, and as he's pouring his milk, blood starts to drip into it, and he looks up and there's the poor dead cat, just hanging over the side of the refrigerator. And again, it's like this rat has a vendetta, It's intentionally taunting this guy.
Do you think it's because he messed with their babies or something? Was that what it was?
I don't know,
but that was supposed to believe.
I guess. I think it was probably supposed to be, but I also thought that it was funny that like he found this nest of rat babies, and then when the mom attacked him, he just dropped it, and like he dropped it on a grate, and like some of them like fell down through the grate, and some of them didn't, and I frankly expected at the end for there to be a twist because I was like, where are those rat babies? Like,
yeah.
I thought there would be an army of rat babies that would come to protect their mother, but. No.
Apparently not. I don't know, this was going through my mind too, because he finds the cat, but before the cat dies is when he gets the poison and puts it around the house. Or maybe it's after he gets the cat. And I'm thinking, are you cleaning up that poison, or are you going to let the cat eat the poison too?
Well, and there are shots of the cat walking all around those traps. I'm like,
yeah,
cats don't know what traps are. Like, that cat is going to get caught in one of those traps. Dummy.
This is not a Tom and Jerry cartoon.
Maybe they were. I'd like to believe that they were saving the rat babies for the sequel. Like,
Unknown Origin 2.
The Revenge.
Known Origin.
Oh, God. Oh, man.
Well, I said I wasn't able to find a lot about this movie online, but one thing I did find is apparently John Waters is a huge fan of this film.
So is Stephen King. Stephen King says it's one of his favorite movies, yeah.
Wow.
But I hadn't read about John Waters. Well, on IMDb, which of course is a completely reliable source, it says that it's Stephen King's favorite movie.
There's no way.
I don't know. There's that. But what did John Waters have to say about it?
John Waters had to say it's the Citizen Kane of rat movies. Wow. I don't know. I don't know. I've never seen Ben. I've never seen Willard or any of that. But if this is the Citizen Kane of rat movies, I guess we don't need to bother doing those later on our podcast.
Oh man, I don't know. And frankly, like, it's not a terrible movie. It's not terribly made. I mean, some of the giant rat effects are pretty unbelievable and kind of, laughable to look at, but there's some suspense, and I don't know. I'm trying really hard to find nice things to say about it because I've seen way worse. Recently, we've seen way worse. So maybe I'm being generous with this one, just because we've come off some real crap piles lately. But it's okay. I'm not surprised that I'd never heard of it before.
It's a perfectly serviceable film. There's nothing wrong with it at all, and you might enjoy it with your kids or something. And I bet, it's one of those movies where if you watch it as a kid, it's way scarier.
Yes.
And then you come back and watch it 20 years later as an adult, and you're super disappointed.
Right.
But the cinematography is fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That in there is really good. There's some really nice sweeping camera angles, some really interesting things they do with transitions, especially when he's going off into dreamland and stuff, taking you around the house. They do these little moments where if you, like, it doesn't even call attention to it, so you wouldn't, you might miss it, where just off in the corner of a scene, you'll see a little shadow or you see a little rat tail disappearing around the corner, with no fanfare, which is really neat, for them to put these kinds of things in. It's just in service to a plot that's just kind of eh. By the end of it, he meets his family. They all hug out in the front of the house. He invites them in.
Oh, my God. Bart, what happened here?
I had a party.
Yeah. There are some really good lines, like when he's talking about how some people in other countries eat rats, and he says, "A filthy rat on fine china." That was a great line. And then there was another one when he's talking to the rat, and he says, "This town ain't big enough for the both of us. I've tried dope." Like that, like, I'm a badass. I can take care of a rat. I've tried dope before. It's got some good lines, some good funny parts. So, there's that going for it.
Yeah. All right, so that's a very tepid thumbs to the side from both of us.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. You know what? Thank you, Nick, anyway, for your recommendation. We do enjoy seeing films that we haven't seen before, and this was certainly a film that we hadn't seen before.
Mm-hmm. And we'll never see again.
Probably not. Well, thank you again for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share with a friend. You can find us on Google Play, you can find us on Stitcher, and on iTunes. Give us a shout out on Facebook as well. We have a page there. You like us on there. Let us know what you thought of this film, any other future films you'd like to do. Earlier, Craig referenced some really interesting stuff that we have seen lately, and the last movie that we watched before this one, we couldn't even bring ourselves to talk about. But if you go onto our website at twoguys.red40net.com, you can see the review of Street Trash, another request that we got this month, and we watched it, and we wrote about it, and we're posting these reviews every Thursday as well to supplement the audio podcasts. Until next week, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.